power of education to ultimately change people's lives. And people ask me all the time, why are you a superintendent? And it's because I believe that everything starts with a good education. That our society and our towns, our communities, everything is built upon what you learn in school and what you do after you leave here. So that's ultimately why I wanted to become a superintendent. But I'm going to start first with a little bit of a story for you, and it goes back to when I was a third grader. If you don't mind traveling back with me in time a little bit, okay? So if you can picture it, it's a cold, like a rainy, gloomy day. I'm standing out a kitchen window, and I'm looking at this truck driving down a road. A gravel road, a town, it's no town, just a long stretch of road out in the country. The truck is on that road and driving away. Rain coming down. That truck that was driving away, that was my real dad, leaving me and my mom and my sister when I was a third grader. And that moment, that truck drove away, changed my life for forever. And what started happening to me that third grade year was I was going to school and I started sleeping in Miss Robertson's class. Miss Robertson, being the great teacher that she was, she called my mom to find out what's going on with Lori. Now, I say to you all, I don't know how she got a hold of my mom, because back in 1983, there was no cell phones, right? We didn't even have an answering machine. And I rode a bus an hour to school each way and back. So she couldn't just catch my mom outside of school. I do not know to this day how Miss Robertson got a hold of my mom, but she did, and I'm so very thankful. Because what my mom told Miss Robertson was that my real dad was an alcoholic, and that he was going back and forth to our home, and that sometimes when he would come home, it wasn't safe for us to stay at home. So if we were at home, my mom would get me and my sister, she'd put us in the car, and we would leave. And if we weren't at home, because my mom had to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, to take care of me and my sister, we would just stay with her. And sometimes that meant that the clothes that I left school in, I showed up at school the next day in those same clothes again. So if you're not at home at night, right, you don't get a whole lot of sleep. So I started sleeping in Miss Robertson's class. What Miss Robertson did for me when I started sleeping in her class, and when she found that out from my mom, is she came over to me and she said, "It is going to be okay if you need to lay your head down on the desk in my classroom." She changed my life. Because what she did for me that third grade year was she made school the safest place for me. She still taught me how to read. She still taught me how to do math. But because school was the place for me where I could be taken care of, and I knew I had someone that believed and cared about me, school became a place that I was so thankful for. I hope you didn't just break that. Is it okay? So school became that place for me. So that's what made me ultimately want to be a teacher. Because of what a teacher did in my life, I also wanted to be in school and teaching kids. And so I became a high school math teacher. I taught at the Colony when I started here in Lewisville ISD. I taught Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, and I loved it. But most importantly, what I would say to you is the reason I became a teacher wasn't because I loved math. The reason I became a teacher is because I love working with students. And I want to be sure that every day that when kids show up to school, that school is a safe place for everyone. All right. Now, I tell you that story because ultimately, when people look at me, right, and I won't ask you to answer this question, you might make some assumptions, right? You might think she's got a degree from Texas Tech University in order to become a math teacher. I had to earn my master's degree. I earned it in mathematics at Texas Women's University because I thought I was going to teach kids math for forever. I have a doctorate degree. I'm the first person in my family to have a college degree and to, for sure, have a doctorate degree. And then ultimately to become a superintendent. You may look at me appearance-wise and maybe you might think she might have had it kind of easy, right? But ultimately, what I would say to you is you never know the story of the person that you're talking to. And the reason that I tell you that is that you cannot let your circumstances in life dictate what you are capable of becoming. My circumstances could easily have determined or said to me, you're not going to be fill in the blank, right? I don't know what you are in here today facing or wanting to become, or what your goal is after you leave LHS and the long maroon line. But what I'm telling you is that there is no hardship that you face in life that you cannot overcome. And in order to be a leader, it is critical that in order to lead, you have to use failure and you have to use those hardships in life to ultimately propel you forward. Failure is not a setback. Failure is a great learning opportunity. There are so many things in life that I look back on and maybe I wanted to be, this or that, and something didn't work out. Those things didn't work out because what I was meant to be, and I get emotional about it. What I was meant to be was a person that's in charge of taking care of kids. And that's why I'm a superintendent. So don't let the times where life might say to you, no. Don't let those times in life where everything seems like it's not working out. Don't let those things stop you. In fact, use those things to ultimately help you figure out what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to be, right? So if you want to be a leader, I hope you hear me say that you are going to face hard times in life. You may be facing that right now as a student. You are going to face hard times. You're going to face hard decisions. Don't be afraid of the hard, okay? Don't ever be afraid of the hard. Take risk, take chances. And if you take a chance and it doesn't work out, learn from it, get back up, and go on and try something different. But don't let the times where something doesn't work out because you took a chance keep you from trying something else again, all right? The other thing that I like to always talk about when it comes to leadership, and the reason why I talk to you about leadership does not just belong to superintendents. Leadership does not just belong to your principal. Leadership does not just belong to your teachers. Every one of us is a leader every single day. You know why? Because you impact people around you. That's leadership. Everything you do every day impacts somebody else. So when I'm talking to you about being a leader, I don't want you to think about leadership in the form of the President of the United States or your principal, right? I want you to think about you are a leader here at LHS every day in how you impact the people that are around you. Sometimes, like I have an impact on lots of people, right? Whether you have an impact on 2 people or thousands of people, you're a leader. So what I tell you about leaders are persistent, leaders listen, right? And leaders care about their impact on other people, right? People ask me, what's most important about leadership? And it's actually that you listen more than you talk. I know I'm doing a lot of talking to you right now, but truly what I do all day long, most of the time, is I listen to a lot of people, because I can only be as good of a leader making decisions that impact tons of people as I am a listener. I came here earlier this year to do something with our staff. LHS was one of the places I was at right after we came back from the winter storm, and I do these things called Lunch with Lori, where my whole goal is really just to build relationships and listen to what people had to say to me. So we think of leaders as talkers sometimes. And sure, a big part of my job is talking like I'm doing with you today. But really, truly, in order to make decisions and in order to make a positive impact wherever you are, you have to be a good listener. So I'm going to challenge you today as you leave here to think about how can you be the very best listener that you can be, right? So leaders are persistent, leaders listen, leaders care about other people. I also get asked, like, what's one of the most important things for leadership? And it's integrity. Like, if you care more about yourself than you care about those who are going to ultimately be, I hate to use the word followers, but be people that you're responsible for taking care of, you have to care more about them than you do yourself. I hope that if you asked Mr. Baker, if you asked any of the staff here from LHS, I hope that they would tell you that they know that I care deeply about them. And that means that I make a lot of sacrifices as a leader, right? Because I care more about how they're doing than how I'm doing. You can chase a position and you can chase a title, but you will ultimately look behind you and find that there's nobody following you, because people will begin to know that you're more about you than you are them. That's not leadership, right? So I hope in that very small amount of time, I've kind of shared with you, don't let your failures, don't let the hard times define you. Take risks, take chances. That's how you find your purpose in life. And ultimately, you're a leader no matter what you do, no matter how many people you impact. So be persistent, be a listener, care about others, and have integrity, all right? So I'm gonna stop there if that's okay. And I wanna give y'all the opportunity to just ask me any questions that you're wondering. It can be about anything, for the most part. What I do or leadership or anything like that. How much time do I have total for questions?
For as long as you would like.
Okay.
We're here for you.
Okay, all right. So what kind of questions do y'all have, or are you wondering? Uh-huh.
Okay, so I might be wrong, but you were originally a high school math teacher, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so what was that tradition from going there to a more, I want to say kind of office-y type of job instead of being a teacher? How was that like?
Yeah, it was a hard transition. Oh my goodness. It's probably one of the hardest things, y'all, I've ever done, because I don't get to be in classrooms with kids every day, and that's why I became a teacher, right? You just heard my story. Like, I wanted to be around all of you every day. I loved it. And so that transition from stepping out of the classroom into a role, I started out with math curriculum to help support teachers who were teaching math. It was really hard. And there were times where I thought I may have made a mistake. right? Because you sometimes, in those roles, I was actually working with adults more than I was with kids. And if you're not careful, you know, when something gets hard, or you feel like the transition is really difficult, you might give up on it. Does that make sense? And so it's really critical. I was talking to somebody about this just yesterday, that you push through some of the hard when you make transitions in life. Like, one of the biggest transitions that was hardest for me, y'all, I don't know what your teachers would say, but when I left high school to college, that was a really rough time. I was excited about it, but it was a hard transition. Because, you know, you reach your senior year, you kind of have things figured out. No matter how tired of school you are, no matter how excited you are about the next thing, you still kind of have it sort of figured out. Does that make sense? Right? So that transition was difficult for me. And I really questioned a lot during that transition. Like, you know, am I doing the right thing? Did I choose the right college? Am I choosing the right job to pursue? All of those things. And so I hope I'm speaking well to your question, that any transition that you have, and I've made a lot of transitions from the classroom to supporting teachers and curriculum, then to overseeing all of the different things that go on in the district as deputy superintendent, and then now as superintendent. Every single one of those changes comes with a big transition, and all of those transitions are tough. So I can't remember. Am I answering your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good, yeah. So don't let those transitions push through the hard, right? Great question. What other kinds of questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the hardest but the best part about being a superintendent?
Yes, okay. I'm gonna start with the best part first. The best part about being a superintendent is that my sphere of what I'm able to influence is so very large, right? When I was teaching in the classroom, obviously I loved it because I was around kids every single day. And of course, as y'all know, like 4 periods a day almost, or 3 periods, because I did student council too, right? That's over hundreds of kids that you're able to see. But now as superintendent, you know, I'm able to ultimately impact the lives of 50,000 students. We have 6,500 employees in Lewisville ISD. So I'm able to impact, hopefully positively for the most part, right? The 6,500 employees. Think about all the parents that come with kids, right? I'm about to get on an interview after I leave here with Fox 4 about public education and how important it is, and why vouchers are so bad. So one of the other best parts of the job is I get to fight for the good, right? I believe in public education. And so yes, I'm gonna go get interviewed and try to influence, right, way more people to stand up for public education. So the best parts of the job are I have the opportunity to work with and impact lots of people. The other best parts of the job is I believe working with students, there's nothing better than that. You all are the next generation, and being around you gives me lots of energy. I was with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders yesterday talking about being a superintendent. I love it. You know, they're cheering me on. They're trying to get me to make a basket in the gym and all kinds of things. Like, just being around kids, there's just nothing better than that, really, truly. So that's the best parts of the job. The hardest parts of the job, and the hardest parts of the job is that it's very complex because I impact so many people. The decisions that I make have a lot of impact. The hardest part is that there's not enough money for me to get to say yes to everything. So I don't get asked for anything that's bad. Because if I get asked for something, it's to help a kid, it's to help a classroom, it's to help a family, it's to help, right? There's nothing you get asked for that doesn't make sense. And I can't say yes to all of it. That is the hardest part of the job. Because you want to say yes to everything and you can't. Because ultimately, we don't have an unlimited supply of money that allows me to say yes to everything. Does that make sense? Yeah. Great questions. What other questions are you wondering?
looking 5 to 10 years down the road, what do you see as the biggest challenges ahead for LISD?
Yeah.
Based on, you know, the teacher inventory or perhaps the private schools, what will be our biggest challenge?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would say a biggest challenge is anything that takes resources away from the school district. So funding is absolutely challenge number one. There are so many things competing for funds across the state of Texas. Education is just one of those things that if we aren't fully funded, it will prevent us from continuing to be able to provide the education that we're providing today. And one of the things that impacts you from being fully funded is the amount of choices that are created. So if our state creates vouchers, all right, where families can be handed, right now they're saying $8,000. We'll give you $8,000 and you just take that $8,000 and go wherever you want. That, they have to put money towards that. So every choice that the state creates, they have to put money towards it, which means ultimately this pot of money for Lewisville ISD shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So challenge number one is absolutely funding and the push for school choice. And then I would say right behind that, challenge number three is there are not enough people choosing to become teachers and choosing to work in education. And we have a lot of people that are able to retire from education. I mean, y'all, you know, I don't know if I said this at the start, this is my 27th year in Lewisville ISD, right? I'm really at the end of my career, okay? There's more people like me working in education than there is people graduating from college choosing to go into education. So that is absolutely challenge number three, that if we don't get more people to want to be in education, I can have all the money in the world to run the school district, but if I don't have people here to work with kids, then I can't provide education either. So that is absolutely the top three challenges. Great question. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a startup called Monster Money, and basically what we try to do is like try to like get financial literacy for kids, because like I'm pretty sure the world is like it's kind of like there's a lack of financial literacy. It's like
Yes.
like
Yes.
from 3 to 8.
See y'all later. Thank you.
And what we're trying to do is we're trying to like fix that through something that kids like, and that's games.
Yeah.
And what do you think? What do you think about that? That's a good idea.
Yes. I absolutely think that anything that we can do that helps people be better with their money and helps people understand how do you take care of your money, how do you use it wisely, like you cannot start that too young, right? So the hard part about that is that you're competing with people's time, right? And unfortunately right now, people spend their time doing a lot of other things, yeah. So I do think it's important, and I think the idea of it being a game might be something that really helps our teachers actually provide that to kids, so I think that's good.
I think that's
Thank
good.
y'all so much, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think like the problem is that like at the beginning of the year and by the end of the year, someone like trying to talk about financial literacy, like in grade from like 3 to 8.
Yeah.
That's like the problem.
So one of the things that we've really been talking about with our state leaders is that we really need to look at, like, what are we teaching students today, right? There are some things that you all are learning that I had to learn when I was in school, right? It's not that that's terrible, right? You also have access to a lot of things that you can learn that we never had access to, all right? So that's a good sign. But when you look at what we're teaching elementary students, there does need to be some changes. There really does. And and the state is kind of way behind on, there are some things that we have to spend time on that I don't necessarily agree with, but until I can get the state to kind of change their perspective on elementary education, which we have to continue to fight for. That would be my other thing to y'all, you know, is about a leader, is that you have to stand up for things you think need to change in a positive way, right? You don't make change by spreading negativity in the world. You make change, you draw people to you with positivity. And so, but absolutely, you know, I feel like I have to stand up for when I see things aren't right. So that's one of the things that we're talking about, is let's look at what courses are people required to take and students required to learn, because there do need to be some changes. Yes?
Do you have any writers or podcasters that you go to when you are seeking kind of some messages or some pathways?
Yes, you know, one of the, it so varies, but I'm always using the internet to find sources of inspiration, encouragement, learning and growth. One of the most recent ones is Simon Sinek for me. He's got a great podcast that I really enjoy listening to, because he talks a lot about how important, you know, just taking care of people is, how important it's always to be driven by your why in life, that if you're not doing something that's connected to your purpose, you're gonna get burned out in that, you know? So I would say right now, kind of some Simon Sinek is what I'm listening to. But ultimately, I change a lot over time, but I would absolutely encourage you all. The great thing about being in the world right now, while technology has some downsides, it's got way more upsides than downsides. And you can find sources of great wisdom, encouragement, inspiration out there on the internet to learn from. I always say one of the most important things you can do is choose your circle well. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Matters, because they play a huge role in the decisions that you make. And I feel the same way about the internet. What you do with it matters, right? If you're just aimlessly scrolling on it, that's minutes of your life you're never gonna get back. So I always believe in using stuff for the good, and using it for the good means I'm gonna only find those things that lift me up as a person, and I don't, you know, look at my watch and go, oh my goodness, I just spent 2 hours scrolling and I really didn't do anything but watch cat videos. Y'all know what I'm saying? I'm not saying don't watch a cat video and get a good laugh out of it, but don't spend 2 hours doing that, right? That's not gonna help you, that's not gonna help you in life. So do some things that are mindless, but don't do that all the time. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
So like, for being like a graduating senior in a couple months, like what words of like encouragement would you have, like going into the real life?
Yeah, you know, ultimately I'll kind of say it can be really frustrating right after you leave and you're trying to figure out what is it you're going to do with yourself, you know? And so my biggest source of encouragement is just don't let that frustration continue to get you down, right? My other source of encouragement, honestly, and this is, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Well, I'll say it with a story. So I decided to go to Texas A&M my freshman year after I graduated from high school, okay? I got there and I couldn't stand it. I apologize. Are there any Aggies in the room? Okay, just checking. It's a great university, all right? It's a great place to go. My husband graduated from Texas A&M, so that's the funny part of this story. I didn't like it. I gave it the full year. So my one piece of immediate wisdom is don't quit on something just because at first you don't like it. Like, you got to give something a chance, right? I gave it a chance. I gave it the full year. I didn't leave at Christmas and go home and stay home, all right? I kind of remember what I was talking about, you gotta push through the hard. I pushed through the hard, but I was like, this isn't for me. And I really began to feel that. And I changed to Texas Tech University my sophomore year. So I say that to you to say, and I loved it. It was for me, it fit, it's been awesome. I'm like a huge Red Raider fan. My license plate is a Texas Tech license plate, you know, but people make decisions and they feel like they're stuck with it. You're never stuck with a decision. And I've been saying, I have a 17-year-old right now in my house. She's gonna be a senior, so she's not as close as you are to graduating. I tell her, like, just choose something, whether it's a job or a college. People put so much pressure on themselves to, I better figure this out right away. Like, I gotta get this right the first time. You don't have to get it right the first time. If you don't get it right the first time, just change it, right? I just think we're guilty right now of putting way too much pressure on the decisions we make because we feel like we're gonna be stuck with them for forever. So I just try to encourage my own kid. Like, if you get to somewhere you don't like, it's okay, we'll fix it, all right? So I hope that makes some sense.
Thank
That
you.
helps. Great question. Yeah.
So when building like relationships, how would you as a teacher, because every student, they have a different, home they come back to, different
Yeah.
situation, and they'll come to school with different energy. How do you as a teacher match the student energy and get them to like, that you're trustworthy and they can come and talk to you and depend on you anytime?
It's probably one of the hardest things about being a teacher, really. Is trying to find ways to connect with each individual student because every student is different. And there are definitely, like if you think about my story, right? Depending on what your background has been, you may find that you don't really trust adults, right? You may find that you may have kids in front of you that they hold themselves back because they've been hurt, right? And so it's really hard to make a connection. And I can only be as good of a teacher as the connection that I have with each student that comes into my classroom. So what I would say to you is the way I worked on that when I was in the classroom and I was a teacher is I tried to get to know my students. Like as a math teacher, what that meant for me is the first day of class, I asked my students to write some information about themselves for me. We didn't start immediately working math problems from day one. I wanted to know, like, what do you enjoy doing? Have you enjoyed math? Have you not enjoyed math? So I say that story to you to say that as a teacher, you have to persist and develop relationships with each individual student and work to let each student know you care about them. And that looks a little bit different. But that's what I did was, I just worked to talk with my students. I just worked to be sure that they knew I cared about them. All right? Hope that helps. Great question.
Also, how
Yeah.
would you describe a bad follower from a good follower?
Yeah, a bad follower is someone who ultimately, first of all, encourages you to think more about yourself than others. That's number one. A bad follower also is not going to encourage you to make positive choices. Like, I wish I could figure out how to say this well, and I hope it comes out okay. Whether it's a follower or a friend, if they really care about you, they're not going to encourage you to do something that could bring you harm to yourself. All right? So, if you have someone that is encouraging you to do something that could be harmful to you physically or to you professionally in your career, that person is not a good follower. And they should respect your decisions and what you're saying. So that would be the other thing I would say about a bad follower is that ultimately if they don't respect your beliefs and your values and what's important to you, then that's not somebody I would want to surround myself with, okay? And I hope by describing what I think is bad, that kind of tells you a little bit about the good, all right? They're gonna respect you as a person. They're not going to ever encourage you to do something that could cause you physical, professional, or long-term harm is most important. Yeah. What other questions?
What's the best book you ever read?
Oh, goodness.
I think one of the ideas about like being a listener is one of the principles for this one book. How to influence people.
Yeah. You know, the thing you have to do to lead in a job like what I have especially is you have to read a lot. So there's a lot of books that really stand out to me. One of the ones about leadership that stands out is the Leadership Challenge book, and it's by Jim Kouzes, Kouzes, and it's really applicable no matter what you're doing in life, but that book probably is one that stands out to me most. The Leadership Challenge, and then anything by John Maxwell. Anything. You can't choose a bad one. This I probably should have answered about the podcast, it's just that I'm not listening to him right now. I get an email in my inbox every single day from John Maxwell. It's never bad, it takes 5 minutes to read it, and it's always great. So any book you pick up from John Maxwell will be great, and will be a huge source of encouragement, no matter what you're facing. All right. Well, how are we doing?
That's great. I love
Okay.
it. I love it. Well, you guys, I'm not the person to ask, right?
Yeah.
It's these guys.
How y'all feel? Yeah, all right. Any other questions?
So what part of you like in charge or control? Like what part do you control in the whole like?
Of the school district?
Yeah. Like, can you explain that more? I didn't really understand. Like,
Yeah.
so like if there was like, if there was like an app, you know.
He's pitching his business
Yeah.
to you. I love it.
But like, if there was something that teaches like kids about money in a more effective way, are you in charge of deciding whether to have that as a curriculum or?
I mean, ultimately, yes. What I have is a team of people
Okay.
that oversee departments underneath me that I've trusted to oversee decisions like that. But if they see something that they know needs to be a decision that comes to me, then yes, they'll bring it to me. But yeah, there's lots of departments
Yeah.
underneath me that do that.
But
I would say ultimately as superintendent, you know, I'm able to influence, impact, decide pretty much almost everything that goes on in the school district. We are run by a school board, which is a group of 7 people that are elected by the community. They're the ones that hire me, actually. So they're responsible for overseeing what I do. And there are certain decisions in the school district that only belong to them that I cannot make. So for instance, if we want to purchase anything in the school district that's over $50,000, I have to take that to the school board and they have to approve it. So I actually can only spend as much money in the district as the school board allows me to. Does that make sense?
you also have to follow like the TEAS curriculum also.
Have to follow any of the state requirements we have to follow, absolutely.
Do you follow like the STEM also? Is there like?
The which
No, I
ones?
don't think there's a STEM curriculum.
There is not STEM, Texas Essential Knowledge and
No.
Skills. We've written our own in the
Oh,
district
yeah.
because of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to thank you for coming today and sharing your story, because the whole idea behind this is that we make people in leadership really palatable to you guys and have you understand what drives them, what their core values are, and so that you guys can take some of those grains of wisdom along with you, right, along your path and craft those things into your very own. Dr. Rapp is probably the example of leadership because she is the leader of all of us, all of the students, staff, the ideas that are passed down, the vision that's passed down, that's all in her, like a little cauldron, you know? So I'm just really thankful you made time with us, and you guys, thanks for coming, thanks for being open and interested, and
Thank you. Obviously, you know, have some desire in what you're doing right now to come and even listen to what I have to say means more to me than you'll ever know. It's the highlight of my day to be here with you all today. You know, and if there's anything that I can do to encourage you at all, I answer every single email I get, whether that's from a student, from a staff member, from a parent. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here for you all too. You know, it's just hard to figure out how to tell 50,000 students that you're here for them, all right? So, but because definitely I appreciate the invitation today, because I try to say yes to every opportunity I can to talk to students so that you know. I want you to know who the superintendent is. I want you to know that I care about what you're doing and experiencing here at LHS. And if I can be of any service to you at all, don't hesitate to reach out, for sure. Thank y'all for helping make LHS great. And I hope, you know, that today I was able to bring you a little bit of encouragement. And if there's anything I can do in the future, I'm happy to try to do that too. So thank you for having me.
thank you. All right, shake a hand, say thank you.
Can I take a picture with y'all? Would that be okay? Would y'all? Yes? Okay. I would love that.
And picture. You're good. Okay.
Where, okay, yep, up here.
Mr. right here.